latest weather, traffic, and news updates online at 560theanswer.com. Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. So what we've been hearing from the California political power structure, that would be the governor, the LA mayor, and the congressionals mainly, who've been dominating the news talk shows, news in quotation marks, is that local law enforcement didn't need help. LA didn't need federal help to address the rioting. And Trump sent a National Guardsman and then sent some more anyway. They escalated. They manufactured chaos and violence. Now things are destabilized, and it's up to the locals to clean up the mess that Trump made. Okay.
All right, cut, scene, paste.
Well, you go ahead and you continue to try to sell that. One of the problems they have, in addition to the visuals coming out of L.A., is that they have a key player that is not going along with that agitprop on behalf of the professional agitators and others adjacent. And that's the police chief of L.A., McDonnell, who responded contra to what you heard from those members of the congressional delegation that chose to put themselves front and center, in addition to Mayor Bass and Governor Bateman there.
We are overwhelmed as far as the number of people out there engaged in this type of activity and the type of things that they're doing. They'll take backpacks, and the backpack will have a cinder block in it. They have a hammer, and they'll break up the cinder block and use that, pass it around to throw at officers, to throw at cars, and throw at other people. We've seen people with hammers, and you've broadcasted, breaking the bollards behind the federal building and taking the rocks, if you will, or pieces of concrete, and throwing them at officers. We've had liquid of who knows what description thrown at officers. There's no limit to what they're doing to our officers.
And Police Chief Jim McDonnell had this to say about the National Guard.
Seeing the second and third day of this becoming increasingly more violent, to be able to say it's because of the National Guard, I can't, because there aren't enough on the ground at this point to make a difference. I've seen civil unrest a number of times before, and generally the second and third days are more violent than the initial phase. And so this is not much different from that pattern. But certainly I think there's a number of things that cause people to come out. Much of it is they watch this and see it on TV, social media, whatever social media outlets they follow, or asking them or telling them to come down and be part of this. And they do that. And they come out here, and many come out and just want to see what's going on. They're out there with their cameras, but they're putting themselves in harm's way and potentially setting themselves up for a criminal future. When you look at some of the things that are happening here, somebody could easily be killed. And if you're part of that, then you're going to be facing those charges as well.
So it's Trump and ICE and the National Guard and even local law enforcement. I mean, it's not an endorsement of Trump from McDonnell, but it's an endorsement of reality versus Newsom and Bass and the No Justice, No Peace Maxine Waters and her facsimiles in the congressional delegation there from California, combined with the professional agitators, people that are firing upon with cinder blocks and other things, firing upon police cruisers, trying to stop ICE operations, waving Mexican flags, lighting Waymo cars on fire, and so forth. I think that's a bad matchup for the left. I think that's a bad matchup.
Yeah, but it seems like a look they don't want to shed.
They don't.
Keep it going.
Well, that's fine. That's who they are, and that's who they are committed to being. Noah Rothman joins us now, senior writer at National Review, author of The Rise of the New Puritans, Fighting Back Against Progressives' War on Fun. Noah, is something we're missing about the strategic genius of Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass here?
Well, you did a pretty good roundup there of the press reactions. One thing I think we missed is, Los Angeles is really big. Do you know that? Super big.
Spread
Huge
out.
place.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, yeah, there's some parts of it that are ablaze, completely lawless, sacrifice to the mob, but not everywhere. So why should you care about it? Certainly the Angelenos shouldn't care about it unless it's right outside their front door, as though people shouldn't have any concern for their neighbors or understand that social unrest like this is a contagion that spreads, particularly when it's left unaddressed. That rounds up the media reaction pretty effectively. I'm much more disturbed by the Democratic Party's reaction at the level of local officials in California, at least for now. This could spread to the rest of the Democratic Party generally. But you see in the reaction a lack of comprehension about what occurred to this party over the course of the last 5-6 years, retreating to a lot of the language that we heard during the 2020 riots. And it's language that exposes, I think, a conceit on the part of Democrats that has really hindered them electorally, and it certainly should. It is the notion, unspoken on their part, but implicit and hard to ignore, that they understand these are their people. You hear it in how they talk about them. Karen Bass, Adam Schiff, Gavin Newsom, on and on, Kamala Harris. These people are not in control of their own actions. They are goaded into it. The forces of chaos in Washington have made them do these horrible things. They're victims. And also, it's really unhelpful, guys. They talk about the degree to which you shouldn't give them what they want. These are direct quotes. Donald Trump wants you to riot, right? He wants an excuse. He probably likes the violence he's seeing. He wants an excuse to crack down on you. Don't make our lives harder. Quote, don't let them succeed, according to Adam Schiff. All of these are appeals to rationality within this group, right? They're appeals to their shared sense of objectives and goals. The subtext is impossible to ignore. Guys, you're making our lives so much harder. What are you doing here? We're on the same side.
Yeah, but Karen Bass, of course, the mayor there, not on a gun excursion at the moment. She said, "Look, everything was fine until ICE conducted raids." And so if ICE just wouldn't enforce what she's essentially saying, if ICE wouldn't enforce federal immigration law, then we wouldn't have a problem.
Yeah, and even that gets the timeline wrong, right? I mean, we had this interview with Bill Esley, as a USAT in California, who described the scene, said in particular this one area outside this Home Depot that became a flashpoint was a staging area for raids elsewhere on employers who are violating immigration law, not necessarily individuals who are illegal immigrants, some of whom have been here for 15, 20 years. Nevertheless, these were staging areas for raids elsewhere, and they were summoned, this mob was summoned to these staging areas as part of a sophisticated operation. Quote, we're seeing a very sophisticated level of organization by union groups and other groups to mobilize people to violently resist our efforts to enforce immigration law here. This is not an organic phenomenon. The sort of thing that is summoned into existence, as you said earlier, by professional agitators, and a willing cast of anarchistic individuals who take any opportunity to smash the foundations of the social compact. This is what gets them out of bed in the morning. Sorry, continue.
No, but then that is papered over. I mean, even when sort of there's some middling rhetoric that acknowledges these professional agitators and anarchists, there's sort of there's still the fallback position of, look, it's mostly peaceful protesters that are advocating on behalf of mostly illegal immigrants.
Well, when you put it that way, it's crystal clear. Yeah, but that's why the rhetoric on the part of Democrats is so illustrative of how they think about this and why they're in the trouble that they are. They can't bear to jettison this millstone around their neck. They can't let themselves say in no uncertain terms, these are not our people. You are not on our side. We do not share the same objectives. They have seen, the Democratic Party broadly for the last 25 years has seen expressions of political violence as a form of misplaced zeal that could be very politically beneficial if it could be harnessed and wielded on their terms. It's how Kamala Harris's campaign approached the anti-Israel, pro-Hamas rioters. throughout 2023 and 2024. You saw it in Occupy Wall Street. You saw it after the 1999 WTO riots. You see this pattern repeat itself continually, and they're repeatedly burned, Democrats are, by the extent to which they embrace what looks like a movement of uncompromising zeal in service to progressive causes and ends up being riotous, composed of malcontents, a lot of people who don't have political objectives in mind. They're anti-political. They don't appreciate the political process. They want to disrupt it, break it, demonstrate the degree to which the American Civic Compact is fragile because it is morally indefensible. That's what these people believe. They make for very bad political allies.
So do you think we're going to have another Summer of Love Volume 2 like we did in 2020, which cost $1 billion to repair all the destruction?
You know, I'm kind of on the fence about it. Part of me doesn't think that we can see. I don't think we're going to see anything of the scale that we saw in 2020 because I think the lockdowns were a real powerful accelerant to those riots. What we saw in 2020 was the culmination of 3 months in which every institution and every person in your life with the expertise in their background said, you can't go outside. It's literally criminal. And you will be, at the very least, an irresponsible person. And then to pivot to say, okay, here's your permission structure to go outside and socialize again. And you can do that without police interference. A lot of people had a lot of pent-up emotions, and I think that contributed to the express. On top of moral panic around racism in this country, I think that gave a lot of permission to the people who engaged in violence that summer. So I don't think we'll see anything of that scale. But elite liberals are talking themselves into it. There's a piece by Michelle Goldberg in the New York Times editorial page this morning. This is what autocracy looks like, is the title. And it describes what we're seeing in the streets of Los Angeles. The bad guy in this story is the Trump administration. Of course. Not the people who are setting fire to ride shares, of course, or assaulting police or raining missiles down on law enforcement from overpasses. No. It's the people responding to all that are the problem. I don't think these rioters are spending a lot of time reading the New York Times opinion page. I don't think they're reading the Atlantic. But you see these arguments there too, and this is an elite liberal phenomenon. They're not going to be the ones executing this violence. But the organizers who do read the New York Times opinion page, who do read the Atlantic, who are as plugged in Washington as any mover and shaker that you can think of, and who are assisting and funding these events, these violent events, they do take their cues.
Well, the other thing that's happening too is they're I mean, as usual, they're projecting when they say that President Trump is spoiling for civil strife. In point of fact, they are. And what this is about is hoping for a police overreach somewhere where they can generate a cause celeb that flips the script. Because Trump is his response yesterday, I think, is right. And people remember those indelible images out of Minneapolis and Kenosha, Middle America. And look, I don't want that to happen again. I'm not going to watch major urban centers or any community burn at the hands of professional agitators, is basically what he said. And people do remember that. And that's the proper, and it's also the politically popular posture, unless somehow these, professional agitators can goad a police officer into doing something that is over the line.
Yeah, but it's just, you're right. That is what they want. But it's such a different political landscape than it was in the summer of 2020. As we just discussed, my colleague at Dan McLaughlin over at National Review has a pretty good piece. This is a pretty dumb strategic move, giving Donald Trump the opportunity to do the summer of 2020 over, because he didn't really get the opportunity to respond to it as he probably would have liked to have. He was in the middle of a re-election campaign. There was a pandemic, et cetera, so forth. And there was, as we said earlier, this moral panic around law enforcement and excessive policing. And that's all gone. It's just the political landscape is now much less amenable to being lax towards criminality, even broken windows, the sort of stuff that begets more law enforcement, more law-breaking down the road, the little crimes that if you ignore, they fester and create a culture of criminality. The public is pretty much more with that than against it, certainly more than they were in 2020. So Donald Trump has room to run. He has room to run on immigration. That's his strongest issue in the polls. He has room to run on crime and criminal justice, even though local law enforcement is not within the purview of the president. But he's going to do what he can to put down whatever he can define within the terms of statute, insurrectionary activity. And within the grounds of statute, insofar as he can define it that way, he has all the room to do what he needs to do to restore order. And I don't think the public is going to look on that and say, oh, wow, this is overreach. This is authoritarianism. This is a king in waiting. I don't think they're going to think that. I think they're going to let him do what he and Republicans believe need to be done to restore order to our cities, because I think most voters really don't appreciate this order in our cities. It's the sort of thing that Democrats should have learned over the course of the last 5 years. It was a lesson that was pretty painful, and yet they do not seem to have internalized any of those lessons.
Noah Rothman, senior writer at National Review, author of The Rise of the New Puritans, Fighting Back Against Progressives' War on Fun. Noah, thanks as always.
Thank you.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
It's like a hot, steaming cup of information to start your day. It's Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Wow. At the time of this being written, both gold and silver are up some 40%. That's 40% in just 1 year. In fact, this past year, gold has broken all-time historic records by hundreds of dollars an ounce. And unlike all other